Right, so the Houthis in Yemen have been causing absolute chaos for Israeli, US and UK shipping for several months now, despite not having a navy of their own to speak of, with small boat attacks, drone attacks and later on missile attacks as a result of support they have from their Iranian backers. Because I'm sure you'll have all forgotten by now that Iran supports the Houthis. Our media never talk enough about that, do they? But a navy might just have entered the Red Sea now, proper navy, to back them up as a result of a deal struck by Yemen with both Russia and China, with Russian warships having now entered through the Bab-el-Mandeb Strait at the south of the Red Sea, prompting concerns that a full-on naval offensive could now begin, and things could become dramatically worse, not just for Israel and its allies, who frankly deserve nothing less by continuing to support the apartheid state to continue its genocide in Gaza, but also for global shipping for all nations if the Red Sea becomes completely impassable for all as a result of increasing military tensions. Right, so the Houthi rebels in Yemen have recently struck a deal with both Russia and China, and potentially leading to the involvement of other BRICS nations against NATO, ostensibly, is how this situation we're observing right now could escalate further, certainly. But right now it appears to be a case of Russian warships as things stand at this point, 4 of them having entered the Red Sea. To do what exactly, though? Being big and intimidating at this moment in time, and we can pretty much hope things stay that way, a force to support the Houthis against any more attacks against them from the US and UK, who have, as we know, been attacking them in support of Israel, getting those nations added to a block list of ships that are allowed to proceed through the Red Sea unimpeded. There was never any need to attack the Houthis. They have taken the stance to stand with Gaza against Palestine, against their occupiers, standing with the innocent people of Palestine. And if diplomatic means had been used already to get Israel out of Gaza, something that should have been done decades ago, frankly, all of this unpleasantness would have been unavoidable. Instead, these Western powers, arrogant in their imperialistic and their superpower beliefs, still felt what they said went, and now the situation is so much worse for them. So what's happened then, Damo? Well, the Houthis have basically struck a deal with Russia and China, saying that they now have free, unimpeded access and passage through the Red Sea. You can imagine Western brains in the US and UK governments imploding at the thought of their biggest military and economic rivals being offered Red Sea passage up on a plate when they can't use it right now themselves for their own shipping, thanks to their own arrogance and political idiocy and siding with a rogue state instead of standing up for what was right and what was just. And of course the Houthis know this. They are not stupid people. They are tactically minded. And they know exactly which buttons to press to make Western leaders squeal like little piggies. What do the Houthis get from Russia and China by way of return? Well, full political support from Russia and China. And of course that can come in a variety of forms, can't it? From aid and support to diplomacy and military support too. And that appears to be the reasoning behind Russian warships having now all of a sudden turned up in the Red Sea. That serves Russia on a couple of fronts. They are making a public show of support for Yemen and what the Houthis are doing right now, as well as ensuring the safety of their own shipping against any attacks that might come against them, and flipping the bird to Western nations they don't like all at the same time. It also heavily boosts the Houthis, who have been seen as little more than a minor irritant by the West. How dare these people act like they are, the jumped up little upstarts, since they now have 2 global heavyweights watching their backs. Now the fight, as we might consider it, is a bit more of a level playing field in the Red Sea. You might consider that the US and UK might toddle off to the UN Security Council to try and get this dealt with, maybe. Perhaps they should have made a case against the Houthis in Yemen before now to them. Not that that necessarily would have been successful. But let them try and make a case against Russia or China, because just like the US and the UK, they are also permanent members of the UN Security Council, who both have the power to veto any vote with a single raising of the hand. Now that Yemen have a deal with both nations, they have in all likelihood just negotiated for themselves full immunity at the UN Security Council, in the same way the US has been covering Israel's backside there up until the other day at least. Such is the issue with permanent Security Council membership, of course. We need to do away with permanent Security Council memberships. It's a farce. It's a leftover from World War II, and it doesn't work for the world anymore. But now the Houthis have the same kind of protection that Israel has enjoyed at the UN. So deal done with Russia and China. 4 warships from the Russian Pacific Fleet yesterday entering the Red Sea and are making their way towards the Yemeni coast, where US and UK warships have been launching attacks from against the Houthis. The Houthis will carry on, as they have done, continuing their shipping blockade. But now they have some beefy backup to take on Israeli and US and UK domestic or military shipping if needs be. All of this will put the US and UK under economic pressure, not just because they can't use the Red Sea costing them more trade, but by giving their biggest global rivals a boost in their trade off the back of that, it ramps things up even more. And when you have the capitalist mentality that both of those nations have, you can imagine them climbing the walls over this. Again, nothing diplomatically has changed in what the Houthis want, though. They want a permanent ceasefire and Israel out of Gaza. Then everything can go back to how it was. This is what they have said from the very beginning. Of course, that all depends on the US and UK accepting that they've been beaten here. And you just can't see that happening. It's a battle of egos at this point. And it stops becoming about people or about genocide and all the things that should actually matter, but don't when it comes to small-minded, power-driven men engaging in a willy-waving contest, as we seem to see in the governments of the US and the UK. Let's look at this another way, though. The UN aren't going to be able to see a way through here. Then I suppose there's always NATO, isn't there? The US and UK are NATO powers in the Red Sea right at this moment in time. So if this ends up going down a military action route, perhaps they could pull in more states against Russia and China here. Well, Press TV, an Iranian outlet, have said it isn't just Russia and China that Yemen have been reaching out to, possibly because they've seen this possible scenario unfold as well, because they've also been reaching out diplomatically to BRICS, B-R-I-C-S, a rival intergovernmental organisation to, well, something like NATO, if you like, though is more incentivized by economics than military might. However, that said, both Russia and China are already members of BRICS, as is Iran now as of this year, along with other notable countries, for example, Egypt, whose border the Gazan people are being pressed up against right now, and indeed who control the Suez Canal at the other end of the Red Sea, and South Africa, who are dragging Israel's backside legally at the ICJ, as well as other large, powerful nations such as India and Brazil. So go ahead, US and UK, because if you do invite NATO into this going forwards, not only does the Red Sea just become even more dangerous, it would become economically unusable, as there are arguably more nations on the other side who could possibly be willing and able to come in as well, just as an all-round general escalation. So how about we just don't do that, just don't go there? How about we don't bring that option to the table, because that's not going to go well either. Functionally, if US and UK hard-headedness in their protection of Israel continues, their economies will continue to suffer as a direct result of that, where their biggest rivals gain an edge. It all comes down once more to how important is Israel really to you? Is it more important than your own country's well-being, your own economic well-being, and that of your own people economically? Because if it is, then leadership such as those countries have really don't belong in power if another nation effectively supersedes the well-being of their own people. That's madness. I sincerely hope we do not see an escalation here, of course. It would benefit nobody. It just drags more nations potentially into this Israel-instigated conflict. But the presence of Russian warships clearly implies a preparedness to go there if needs be. Is this pro-Israel stupidity going to lead to worse, or will it finally see pressure placed on Israel to end its insanity from those who have supported it for far too long right now? I guess we will just end up having to wait and see for a moment. It's not as if the Houthis haven't already promised more to come following the sinking of one UK vessel already. And sadly, as this video recommendation shows, the loss of life at Houthi hands finally had come to pass as another ship, the True Confidence, got hit. A sad inevitability of such actions, but it came as it did after the deaths of many, many more Houthis at the hands of US and UK strikes. And I'll hopefully catch you on the next vid. Cheers, folks.